Hello and welcome to Comic Talk, the segment on my channel where we talk about comics. I'm Brad, and I'll be your host. Now, the first comic in question will be Superman issue number 22. It is part 3 of Black Dawn. Now, taking a quick look at the comic book covers, because there are two alternate covers that I know of, we can actually see that the one has Superman boring through the ground with his heat vision, and the other one has John Kent, again with his heat vision flared up. I would like to point out that nowhere in the comic do either of these scenes actually happen, because comic books. Clickbaiting before YouTube since comic books. Now, picking up where we left off with the last issue, Lois is actually still at home at the farm, and she really just wants to be out with John, Clark, and Damian looking for Bruce. Lois, being the antsy reporter that she is, can't sit still, and she buggers off out, where she finds that the oak tree in the middle of the field is on fire, and then she ends up going to Mr. Cobb's house and Kathy's house, and she has a short conversation with them before she decides to hightail it to town. When she gets to town, she finds a friend of hers, Candace, is out and about, and she's kind of wondering what's going on with her, so she follows her, and she ends up in the basement of Town Hall, like a sub-basement of a sub-basement. It turns out it's like a bomb shelter from the time of World War II. When she gets down there, she ends up in a room where she finds that there are a whole slew of computer monitors, and their entire life, literally even their secret identities, have been laid bare for whomever is watching these screens to see. She hightails it home to grab the Justice League communicator. When she gets home, she actually finds that the mayor, what looks like the sheriff, her friend Candace, and some other people from town are just there, waiting in her living room, like, hey, we're in your living room. Now, this is not a good scene, obviously, so she takes off upstairs to her bedroom where she has a lockbox, and in the lockbox, she has the glove from the Hellbat suit Gauntlet. She gets the glove on just in time to blast one of the intruders that's followed her upstairs. She hops out the window only to find that the Batmobile has just pulled up, and she hops inside. Now, once in the Batmobile, the car won't start for her, and it's not until she grabs the steering wheel with the glove that there is recognition between the glove and the car, and it'll start for her. She takes off and doesn't make it that far down the road before she realizes that the strange people that were in her house, that probably aren't people, are now pursuing her, like flying pursuing her. But the Batmobile, auto defenses kick in, and it takes them all out, and she makes it a little bit further down the road, but not that further, because all of a sudden the Batmobile just begins disassembling itself until she's just sitting there in the driver's seat on the dirt road. Now, while Lois is sitting there, likely scratching her head, wondering how the heck the Batmobile just disassembled all around her, and why she's just sitting on this dirt road, buckled into the Batmobile driver's seat still, we're greeted with one panel of Mr. Cobb looking down at her, and he says, "Hello, Lois." I think that Mr. Cobb has something to do with the disassembling of the Batmobile, don't you? Now, elsewhere, we see that Superman is now wandering around, and has been for hours, in the corridors of the house that he was introduced to in the last episode of Comic Talk. He's beginning to lose his hope of finding Batman when he discovers a hatch that takes him even further down the rabbit hole. At the bottom, he discovers what looks like weird preservation tubes of some sort with the likes of Batman, Damian, Frankenstein, and some various other people inside. And that's where the issue leaves off. So we find out that the town probably isn't the town. It's all been some sort of a lie, and it's been built in some way to surveil Superman, John, and Lois. I thought this issue was great. I would have liked to see more Superman in it as a Superman fan. However, I do understand the need to further the story, and it was really nice. It was refreshing to see Lois doing her Lois thing, being all courageous, being daring, being resourceful. It was a good issue, and overall I would give this issue probably about an 8.5 out of 10. Now, the next comic in question is issue number 22 of Batman. It's part 3 of The Button story, and it's a crossover between Batman and Flash comics. Now, this issue starts out with a very short, concise retelling of the end events of Flashpoint from Thomas Wayne's perspective. He informs us that the Flashpoint universe did not, in fact, cease to exist after he sacrificed himself so that Bruce could live, but rather it continued. That means all of the wars and the flooding and the deaths in the millions just continued to happen. We learn that Wonder Woman and Aquaman, although they agree on almost nothing, have both of their soldiers coming for him to put an end to the Batman. And at that point, we are greeted with the Batman and the Flash arriving as in the end of issue number 21. Bruce has a look around where he realizes, just as he did in the end of the last issue, that this is indeed his cave. It's just not his cave. There's no gadgets, there's no tech down there. It's just a bed and a gun under a dome. Bruce and Thomas are in a little bit of disbelief at the whole situation. Thomas more so than Bruce. Thomas starts angrily suspecting and accusing the Flash of this whole thing being some form of trickery, but Barry manages to explain that no, it has indeed been months, at least from his perspective since the Flashpoint, but something has kept it going, and that they're there looking for Thawne. After some discussion, Barry decides that he needs a minute, literally a minute, to rebuild the treadmill, while Wonder Woman and Aquaman's forces arrive to dispatch Thomas Wayne. At this point, Bruce and Thomas put their cowls back on and fight Aquaman and Wonder Woman's troops and defeat them. I thought this was really cool to see Thomas and Bruce fighting side by side in this issue. I really like the idea of Bruce and Thomas being able to talk to each other and fight side by side, even if it's just for a little bit. Now, after Thomas and Bruce dispatch Aquaman and Wonder Woman's forces, we find that the treadmill is actually ready to go. Bruce and Thomas have a short conversation with each other, and one of the topics up for discussion was actually the letter that Thomas sent back with Barry for Bruce to read, of which Bruce exclaims that it was the most important thing he's ever had in his life. We also discover that the treadmill is not only ready to go, but it is heating up and it is going to leave with or without them, and that Thomas Wayne really has no desire to go back with Bruce and Barry. And so he kicks Batman onto the treadmill and pleads with him to give up the mantle of the Bat and to let it die with him. Then the treadmill disappears back into the time stream, and we see Thomas Wayne put the cowl back on, grab his batarangs, and run into the whiteness of nothingness. Now, back in the time stream, Batman and Flash are trying to figure out what the heck just happened. You can kind of tell that Batman sort of wants to go back and see his dad again, or maybe find a way to go back and get him at a later date. But Barry sort of has to tell him, hey, listen, they don't exist anymore. We can't go back there. There is no there to go back to. At this point, the Reverse Flash runs by, holding the button in his hand, and he says that he's seen the people that hold the power of the button. And that's where this issue of Batman will leave us. Right there. I'm sure they'll pick the story up quite nicely in the next part of the story, which will be a Flash comic, and I just can't wait to see what they're going to do with it next. They've got a whole awesome story up their sleeve, and it's spanning many titles in the DC Universe, some of which I don't review on this segment. I would give this issue a straight 10 out of 10 because there's nothing about it that I would change. I like the artwork, I like the storytelling, I like the pace that it keeps up to, I like the fact that it reveals some things and also has a few more mysteries involved with it. This was a great issue, from front to back. Like I said, I think that what DC Comics is trying to do right now is right some of the wrongs of the past and make people who are longtime fans feel like they're welcome again, while also keeping the door open for new fans. I think they're doing a great job of this, especially with this miniseries. Well, that's all the time I have today for Comic Talk, so thank you so much for watching this episode. It means so much that you've joined me today. If you bought either of these issues yourself and you have more to add, please let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you next time with the next episode of Comic Talk.